Hello and welcome to Atheist Torah Study. My name is Emma and I'm the host. Atheist Torah Study is my own personal exploration of the Torah through it's about a 50-week cycle of reading the Torah once a week. You get through basically the entire Torah in a year, reading it in parshas, and a parsha is a part of the Torah. It's a small, it's usually two or three chapters from a book in the Torah, which is, um, for Christians, it's the Bible, the Old Testament and the Bible, the first five books of the Old Testament. And for Jews, it's the Torah. We read the Torah. It's a standalone book. It's the central religious document of Judaism. And we read it every year. We start at the beginning in Bereshit. We end with Devarim, with Deuteronomy, and then we start all over again. And then for Jews, in addition to the Torah, which is kind of the foundation of the Jewish religion, then there's also a lot of commentaries on the Torah that add a lot of context to it. Most notably the Talmud. So, which was written in the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, and it's a document that was written over hundreds of years by hundreds of rabbis, and it was a commentary on the Torah. Since the Torah is just five books, it's kind of expands on the Torah a lot. So, and the Torah itself encourages Jewish tradition kind of encourages the sort of commentary that I'm doing. So I don't really feel like I'm doing something that's out of context within Jewish tradition because my own understanding of the tradition is that it very much encourages commentary and discussion. So it's very different from Christianity that way because it's more, I don't know, it's more about engaging with the text, trying to figure out what it means. I mean, Jews are really encouraged to learn Hebrew so that they can read the text in its original. And um, I think Christianity is more, I mean, the text is more fixed in Christianity because Christianity is very Greek and it has this, I don't know, it has this idea of this like omnipotence of the religion that kind of goes with its origins in the Roman Empire. I mean, it kind of sees itself as all encompassing and it kind of like it answers everything. So, anyways, um, but I'm an atheist, so it's like for me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just talk about the text each week and make some sense of it because if you just read it straight up, like you just have no idea what this is, then it's very challenging. Well, challenging, isn't it? It's very annoying. There's a lot of the Torah that's just very annoying. And there's nothing wrong with having a very clear read of the Torah literally. I mean, you can't look at any text, no matter what it is, and not read it literally. I mean, if you're an AI generating robot and you read the text, you're going to look at it literally. I mean, now if you're a really good AI program, then you'll understand the rich complexity of the text in a much better way. But, you know, for for thousands of years, other religious traditions and other people have read the text literally. They just have, because that's what happens the first time you read something. What's really special about Judaism and why I really appreciate Judaism so much and really enjoy it is that you can start with the text, with the literal read of the text, but then you can like dig into the text over and over again. And the text is like, it's like clay, you know, it's like, it's like, it's really, it's like clay. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, you can just, you can, you can, take that clay and you can work it over and work it over. You can turn it over, reshape it, hollow it out, fill it in. You can fire it, you can break it down, add some water, reconstitute it, put it back together again, knead it some more. It's it's a very flexible text. And the reason that it's so flexible is because the tradition of how Jews read Torah makes it flexible and makes it something that you can really work with. So it's easy for me as an atheist to work with this text. It's not so easy to do it with the New Testament, although sometime I may do a read an atheist interpretation of the New Testament. I may do it. Um, just because I'm so interested to explore um, the ideas in Caesar's Messiah a little more, even though I know that Caesar's Messiah is like mostly debunked. But the idea of Roman provenance still really fascinates me, and I still think that that's the correct way to go about interpreting the New Testament of the Christian tradition. So, but right now I'm in the Old Testament in the Torah, and I'll probably be here for a long time. I may never get to anything else. I don't know. Because the Torah is great, and I've spent about 10 years now in the Torah, and I've really been enjoying it. So, anyway, so let's get to the Parsha. So the Parsha today is Parsha Shemini. It's I'm doing a little bit of cheating here, and I'm taking some notes from Wikipedia. So Shemini is the eight, it means eighth. I did know that already. But the reason that I pulled up Wikipedia is because Wikipedia always tells me what number it is in the Torah cycle. It is the 26th Torah portion. So we're exactly halfway through. If any of you are following me, I don't really think anybody is following me. I'm pretty sure nobody's following me. So but if anybody is following me and they or in the future, if anyone follows me in the future long after I'm dead, and they notice that there was a skipped week there, because I did skip a week, it's because last week was Pesach, and Pesach is Passover, and that's when Jews get together and they read the Haggadah. The Haggadah is a separate text written specifically for Passover, and it tells the story of the Jews leaving uh, Egypt and creating the nation, creating the people. So that's basically what it is. It's really just an excuse to get together and have some food and do a little bit of ritual, a little bit of Jewish ritual. So I did a couple of Passover Seders this year. The first one I did was really great. I did it in a prison. I went to the men's prison here in Portland where I live, and there was just three of us, and we did a Seder inside of the prison for one person who's inside the prison. And that was really cool. You have to get everything approved by the prison first, and then they have to like search all your stuff, and then you can go in and do the Seder. So it was very nice. And then I did another Seder, and it was really cool. So for this Seder, I actually wrote the Haggadah. Well, I didn't write it, I sourced it. I sourced the Haggadah because I wanted a Haggadah I wanted a specifically anti-Zionist Haggadah, but I also wanted a Haggadah that was both anti-Zionist and non-Zionist. So for people who really might be offended by an anti-Zionist Haggadah. I wanted to make sure that the language was inclusive enough of a non-Zionist Haggadah, but I wanted a Haggadah that really centered the genocide in Gaza. That was really what was really important to me this year, was that like the Haggadah really centralize that and acknowledge that there's been a genocide in Gaza, that the Palestinian people are suffering, and that the meaning of this religion, the text of this ritual should be to it should be a call to justice. And so I tried to really do that while also really trying to be authentic to the Haggadah, just absolutely as authentic as I possibly could be. I mean, making sure that all the portions were included, making sure that there was a lot of um that there was all the proper texts, including the prayers, even though I don't pray, but the prayers that were in there. Um, but that the places where there was opening for commentary and interpretation, I made sure that everything was really centered on either the Jewish tradition of creating justice in the world, in a world in which there's so much injustice, or really just specifically flat out centered on the people of Gaza, because what's happened in Gaza in the last 3 years is just a complete abomination of everything that the Torah stands for. So, anyways. Okay, well, let's get started. So this is Parsha Shemini, and I am very familiar with it. I'm familiar with all of the parshas in the Torah. And excuse me, I do that a lot. Um, just Parsha Shemini, there's a couple of there's some big moments in Parsha Shemini. The first really big moment is that there's all these offerings. And so Parsha Shemini again is set back in the period of the hypothetical temple. By hypothetical temple, I don't mean the hypothetical temple that existed in Jerusalem during the 200 or 300 years that Israel was kind of its own country. I mean the hypothetical temple that's written about in the story. This is like a story about, well, it's not a temple at this time. At this time in the story, it's a Mishkan. So it's this imaginary um, thing out in the desert, and it's described in great detail. And here's these imaginary people at this imaginary Mishkan, this imaginary temple, doing animal sacrifices. And animal sacrifices are something that actually is done at the actual temple in Jerusalem, were done until it was destroyed. And this is like an imaginative retelling of the past. So it should be very interesting to read it. I've been reading one of my favorite books again this spring. It's the springtime when I'm recording this right now, and every spring I always reread Ulysses by James Joyce. It's my favorite book of all time. And it's probably just because I was forced to read James Joyce when I was in high school, and there was something about Portrait of the Artist as a young man that really interested me. And so I really developed this love of Joyce's literature, and especially Ulysses. It became something about Ulysses became just I don't know why I don't know why love that book so much, but it became my favorite book. I probably there's some other really good books too, but I love Ulysses. And right now I'm in the part of Ulysses where Stephen Dedalus is having this long conversation in a bar, and he's talking about the ghost of Hamlet, and how when Shakespeare was writing Hamlet, he was really writing about his imaginary father, um, creating an imaginary son. And he was talking about how he was trying to get at the idea of how, like, what we imagine the past to be is often completely different from what the past really was. And we usually try to think of the past in a way that kind of maybe gives it a romantic tinge, or just it gives it a very different kind of idea. So it's like he's getting at these really, yeah, I mean he's like Uber box within a box within a box, because he is writing this story, and in his mythical story he's writing about one day in the life of two people, Stephen Dedalus and Leopold Bloom. And he goes back and forth between the two characters. Leopold Bloom is a Jew, and he's a great character. I love Leopold Bloom. I don't know which character in Ulysses I like more. I mean, I love them both so much. But he goes back and forth in between their two inner worlds, and he follows them for a day. So this is just like from the time they wake up until the time they go to the bed, you know. Uh, Stephen Bloom wakes up in it seems like it's a lighthouse, like they're living, like he's renting a lighthouse. But anyways, he wakes up with Book Mulligan, and at the end of the book, Leopold Bloom goes to bed with Molly, his wife, and he just absolutely, the best thing in the world is loving his wife. So it's very romantic. Anyways, but it's Uber box within a box, and it just has, it's a really long book. It's like, it must be, I think it's about 1,000 pages, which is a lot for one day of one person's life, and a lot of it, it's not really, I mean, the more times I read it, I realize it's not really stream of conscience. It's like really James Joyce is just writing on ad infinitum about stuff he already knows about really well. And he's just using this excuse to like fill this text with just volumes and volumes of esoterica that he just knows, but he's putting it into his character. I mean, there's parts of the book where it is very, it is very much like a novel, but a lot of it's just this rambling stream of really essentially James Joyce's brain. But the point of this is, the reason I'm telling this is because this is exactly what Shemini is about too. Shemini is about how we imagine the past. The whole Torah is, but Shemini especially is about how do people imagine the past? How do they put a romantic lens on it? And then what happens when that lens gets reinterpreted by somebody, and then now they're thinking about it too. So that's really what it's about. I mean, and then, for me as an atheist, well, I mean, I think I've already given away several of the things that, I mean, I see as an atheist. I mean, first of all, it's just imaginary, so if it's imaginary, then who wrote it? You know, now Richard Elliott Friedman argues that this was written by so Richard Friedman is one of my favorite um, uh, biblical commentators on the Torah. And Richard Elliott Friedman talks about how this was written. Um, he thinks it was slowly put together, but so Richard Friedman says this is a priestly document, and this was written by the priestly writer, the P writer, or writers, really. And that, because it's so much of this particular text is centered on religious liturgy and religious ritual. And so, and that it was written, I don't know. He doesn't give exact dates. I mean, maybe after the Babylonian exile, sometime around then. Now, uh, Yonat, I always get his name mixed up, but Yonatan Adler or Yotanan Adler uh, argues that this was, well, he doesn't say exactly when he was written, but Nathan Adler is much more interested in when was this widely disseminated. So he doesn't get into exactly when it's written, but he does talk about it when it's widely disseminated. Now, I would argue that as the text, and this is just me arguing, this is just me, my own speculation, that the moment that it's widely disseminated is around the same time that it was written. I mean, I don't think it was, you know, widely disseminated much later than it was written because I mean, I'm just imagining somebody sitting around with this text for like 400 years or 300 years and being like, oh, I've got this really great text. I'm just going to put it in my closet for 10 generations. And, there'll be a small group of people that knows about it. And it's just going to sit in my closet. And then 10 generations later, uh, you know, or even longer than 10 generations in those days, then I'm going to suddenly widely disseminate it. There's going to be a priestly class that rules the entire country, and it's going to get widely disseminated. I just, I just don't know if I believe that. I think it's much more likely that it was written around the same time that it was widely disseminated. And the reason I think that is because I just kind of understand how writers are. I mean, when you write something, then you really want it to be read. People really want a reader when you write something. And I think this was just a cultural moment. I mean, I think this book represents a cultural moment in Jewish history. I mean, there was definitely Jewish history before the Torah. Um, but this represents a very specific moment in Jewish history. This is like a group of people coming together, forming a collective identity, centralizing that identity, and then putting that into a text. And it gives you all of the information that you need to look at the text and to kind of understand the basics about what's going on with these people at that time. So it's a historical document. I mean, it's definitely a historical document, even if it's badly written and the God is just super annoying, because this God is like really, really annoying. But I mean, it's a historical document. It is. Now, what's been done with it since then? Oops, sorry. What's been done with it since then is so interesting, because it's like we start off with this text that's like really um it's not that good of a text. I mean it's really it's not a bad text for the time. For the third century BC, it's not a bad text. I mean, it's and I think part of what's going on here too, I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head. So this is why this is just my own personal Torah commentary, and I'm not a paid religious scholar, because nobody would tolerate me, basically. I'm just talking off the top of my head. But there's um there's not a lot of choices at the time in the ancient world for what kind of text you can choose from. I mean, you have the Odyssey. Everybody knows the Odyssey. You have different kinds of religious texts from the Romans. You have the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You have Egyptian texts. I mean, there's some different cultures with some texts. And think about it. Almost everybody's literate. Like 99% of everybody on earth is illiterate. So language is already this incredibly elite practice. I mean, very, very few people are literate. So of the people who are literate, the ones who bothered to write some epic narrative like the Torah are even smaller. So there's just not that many like of these kind of epic stories circulating in the ancient world. But they're definitely circulating. I mean, when we think about this kind of text now in modernity, we we territorialize it. So we associate it with what we understand as some kind of fixed history of the ancient world that gradually threaded out these religions and these nationalisms and these languages and these identities. And now looking back at it from, a modern point, looking back 2,000 years, 2,300 years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, we can trace the development of large movements within this, not really large movements, but movements of privilege. And so we can trace those movements of privilege and how they shaped the territoriality of the collective experiences that people were having. And this text is really central to that. I mean, it's an important part of that story. But at the time it was written, 2,300 years ago, it was a different kind of text. It was an epic narrative. And it was an epic narrative that was an epic narrative that was it wasn't in competition, but it was in circulation with other epic narratives at the time. And so the very elite, very small group of people who were writing these texts, like knew probably about some of the other texts that were, and they didn't know about all of them, but they knew about some of them. And so when you put it in that kind of a lens and you look at this text, it's it has a very different kind of meaning. I mean, now that we are living in a world where, I mean, I don't know what percentage of the world is literate, but it's a lot. And there's a lot of writing and there's a lot of texts. And now we have AI, which is like, it's taken all of the texts that it can possibly consume illegally. I will mention it's taken all of the so much of the intellectual production of the world without any kind of permission. And now it generates its own text. We have this auto text generating machine. We've gotten very good at generating these texts now to the point where these machines just do it instantaneously. But again, most people are literate, so we have a different take on it now. But at the time this was written, even though it's a badly written book, it still has some things about it that are interesting enough to the people who read it that they really want to engage with it and they want to like develop it, which they did. I mean, Jewish tradition really took this text. There are some moments of inspiration in this text that like really speak very deeply to our desire for justice, for egalitarianism, for making the world right. I mean, I think at the heart of the text is this profound recognition that we have a responsibility to try to do things to make the world better. I mean, I think that's really clear in the text. Anyways, let's do some reading. I don't know I don't know how much we'll get to. Just so I want to give a quick summary. Just I mean, there's not a lot that you really have to summarize with the text. There's basically three big parts of the text. There's the beginning where there's this ritual, this group ritual that everybody's doing. And then they see God in the story. And then kind of the central point of this particular parsha is then Aaron, who's one of there's Moses and then there's Aaron. And Aaron's like sort of the second in charge or whatever. And then so he has some sons. I guess he has like four sons in the story or something like that, maybe more. But anyways, two of his sons get murdered by God. They get murdered by God because they brought an alien fire to the so that's kind of, the central part of this text is, the and that's very clever too. Like, the one of the most important people in the text, his two sons get murdered. And it's like you're just like, what? Why did he get murdered? What did they do that for? And it's like that it keeps you engaged. So it was very clever of the writers to put that in, even though there's better literary devices. But so then there's so much commentary about why did they get murdered? What did they do wrong? And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the last part of the text is all about the laws of kashrut. And kashrut is Jewish dietary law. I obviously, if you couldn't guess, you could probably guess this, but I don't practice kashrut. Um, and it's not that I am opposed to it or anything like that. It's just not something I do. Um, anyways, so I'm gonna get started, but for some reason my computer just oh, here we go. Okay. My computer it does this. Okay, Shemini, let's just go ahead and get started. On the eighth day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said, take a calf of the herd for purgation offering. Oh, I've never heard purgation offering. Take a calf of the herd. This is from Sepharia, by the way. So Sepharia is usually the best text. So, anyways, take a calf of the herd for a purgation offering and a ram for a burnt offering without blemish, and bring them before God. And speak to the Israelites, saying, take a he goat for a purgation offering. Um, I think they mean so in the text, I usually understand that as a sin offering, but they're calling it a purgation. I wonder what they mean by purgation offering. A calf and a lamb, yearlings without blemish, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for an offering of well-being to sacrifice before God, and a grain offering with oil mixed in. For today God will appear to you. They brought to the front of the tent of meeting the things that Moses had commanded, and the whole community came forward and stood before God. Moses said, this is what God has commanded you to do, that the presence of God may appear to you. Then Moses said, come forward to the altar and sacrifice your purgation offering and your burnt offering, making expiation for yourselves and for the people. Sacrifice the people's offering and make expiation for them, as God has commanded. Aaron came forward to the altar, slaughtered his calf of purgation offering. Aaron's sons brought the blood to him. He dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. He poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. The fat, the kidneys, the protuberance of the liver from the purgation offering, he turned into smoke on the altar. So he burnt it as God had commanded Moses. The flesh and skin were consumed in fire outside the camp. Okay, whatever, who cares? Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. Aaron's sons passed the blood to him. He dashed against all sides of the altar. They passed the burnt offering to him in sections, as well as the head, turned it into smoke on the altar. He washed the entrails and legs. Oh, God, this is so gross. Next, he brought the people's offering. He took the goat, the purgation offering, slaughtered it, presented it as a purgation offering. He brought forth the burnt offering and sacrificed it. Then he brought forth the grain offering. Oh, good. Finally, something's not getting murdered. He brought forward the grain offering, and taking a handful of it, he turned it into smoke on the altar, in addition to the burnt offering. Oh God, then there's more. He slaughtered the ox, slaughtered the ram, the people's sacrifice of well-being. Aaron's sons passed the blood to him, which he dashed against every side of the altar. I always wonder what it means when they say he dashed. Like, does it mean he just like threw it? Did he throw it like a girl? Or was it like he dashed it like a man? How did he dash? Anyways, sorry. The fat parts of the ox and the ram, the broad tail covering the fat, the kidneys, the protuberance of the liver. They laid these fat parts over the breast, and Aaron turned the fat parts into smoke. So this must have been a really hot fire if it's like all sizzling up. And elevated the breast and right thighs as an elevation offering. Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them. He stepped down after offering the purgation offering, burnt offering, offering of well-being. Moses and Aaron went inside the tent of meeting. When they came, what did they do when they went inside the tent? When they came out, they blessed the people. The presence of God appeared to all the people. fire came forth from before God and consumed the burnt offering, the fat parts on the altar. The people saw, shouted, and fell on their faces. So that's the big climax. The big climax is that, did it say that God came out of the tent? The fire came forth before God. It doesn't say where God came from. It just said it appeared. Okay, so that's the text. Ugh, I I don't know. I kind of wish that I just read the part about Nadav and Abihu first. But this is good stuff. This is I just can't help it. It's like this is just crazy. This is like some crazy shit. It's like, first of all, it's just totally gross. They're just like sitting here slaughtering these animals. And it's just like, why is this here? Why is this here? I don't know. I never, there's so much of the Torah is like this. It's just this bloody, I mean, of course, we don't do this, Jews don't do this now. So why save this? I don't know. I don't, there's something about the first person who does anything, that it just kind of snowballs from there. I don't know. I don't really have much of anything good to say about this. I have to be honest. I mean, there's not a lot in here that I find very ethical or even interesting. Um, I mean, there's a few things that I find interesting. One is why is so, I mean, so there's this thing about blood, that, and in kashrut, when the dietary laws of kashrut, it's very important to get the blood out of things because the blood is considered to be very important. So, uh, anyways, I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about this portion, except at the very end. So the story talks about how my cat is staring at me and I just can't stop looking at my cat. Hey, here, Muffin, say hi to everybody. This is my cat, Muffin. Here she is. Hey, Muffin, say hi to everybody. Actually, it would be kind of interesting to do part of this Torah commentary where I'm talking, but you're just looking at the cat, because I think the cat is much more interesting to look at. Um, oh my, she's really looking at the screen too. I guess she can see herself. Anyways, so the Torah commentary here, one of the interesting parts about it is like, how do people see God? How do people see God? Because here the God is appearing, and the fact that there's this bizarre ritual being made to this God who apparently requires these sacrifices from the people, and then the God just kind of appears before the people. This feels very, very pagan to me. I mean, it really does. It feels extremely pagan. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it really does. It's just like, this is like some people who they feel like they need to, they really need to have this presence of this God, and somehow the God needs to like be present to the people in order for it to exist. And I find that, kind of antithetical to my own understanding of what monotheism is. I mean, like, in a way, I feel like the way that this has gotten reinterpreted from history is that it's gotten reinterpreted in a way to kind of say, oh, here's what these people in the ancient world used to think about the presence of the God. So, anyways, it's it's an article of faith is really what it is. I mean, I just don't know how else to say it. Somebody asked me at the Torah study the other day if I understood what faith means. And yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think I do. I really do. And I think that these people understood what it meant too, because they had to write their God into the text to appear so that when people were reading the text later, then they believed in the God. So, the only place that the God has a reality in the story is here where the God is, appearing as fire. And that's really interesting too. So that's something really tangible, that you can actually, there's not a lot of places in the Torah where you can sort of like take that, although, the Zav, where the presence of the God like just passes right over Moses is really, there's another, the God keeps on appearing in really tangible ways here in these texts. And so the God appears very tangibly here as fire, and not just as fire, but as like this, I don't know, this just, anyway, it's fire. That's what the God is. The God here is fire, and the God appears as fire in several places, which is interesting too, because the Zoroastrians. I mean, I never want to forget about the Zoroastrianism, because that was a really, really big religion in the ancient world, really big, and it was all about fire and light. And here, God is fire. So, but of course, God is fire in other religions too. Anyways, let's move on, because I really want to get to Nadav. I don't think I'll make it to Kashrut. I will talk about Kashrut for just a minute here, though. So one of the really fun things about Kashrut is that Kashrut is like all about animals. And so it mentions like all these different kinds of animals. Like it doesn't mention all of the animals in the world, but it mentions lots of animals, and the kind of animals that you can eat and the kind that you can't eat. And from a sciencey perspective, that's just interesting, just because somebody's actually bothering to make a list of animals. I mean, animals are wonderful. I mean, as we can see, animals are just these amazing gifts. Well, not gifts. Animals are these amazing creatures in their own right. They have their own autonomy and their own brilliance and their own unique identities. And just the fact that somebody's writing about animals in a book, I always find it very interesting, because animals are so interesting. And this is about the kinds of animals that you can eat and the kind that you can't eat. So it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, um, the laws of the Torah don't really make the laws of kashrut. Well, I don't follow them. So, but what they're supposed to do is you're supposed to follow kashrut, and that's part of how you distinguish yourself from other cultures and other people. And that's part of how you know that you're a Jew, is because you keep your life kosher. And the reason that you do kashrut is because that's what God commands in the Torah. And so you just do it because that's what God commanded. So, that's again, it's like, I mean, God didn't make the laws of kashrut. The Hasmoneans did. Some Hasmoneans in the third century BC invented this bizarre set of dietary laws. And ever since then, people have been following them. And the reason that they invented the laws was not, the only reason that they invented these laws of kashrut was so that people would follow their laws. And that's part of how they enforced religious obedience. So it's the same way that in Islam, you pray 5 times a day, and during Ramadan, you don't eat all day, and it's just another way of like creating some kind of buy-in into the religion. And I mean, what you eat every day, all the time, and that how that's supposed to constantly remind you of the God, is a way of like ensuring obedience to the religion, because everybody eats. And you know I mean, they could have made laws about how you go to the bathroom, because everybody does that too, but that would be kind of disgusting, and nobody would want to follow that religion. But I think, you know if I made an atheist religion, why not make a set of laws about how you go and poop and pee? And, if you don't do it the right way, then you're not, then you're not a true adherent to the religion of Bob the subgenius. I mean, in my, in if I had a set of rules for that, number one would be everybody gets a Japanese toilet with a bidet. That would be number one. If you don't have a bidet, you do not belong to the religion. That's like number one. And then like number two would be it has to be like really good, like 4-ply toilet paper or something like that. Oh, but you can't have toilet paper because you're trying to save the environment, so it'd have to be something else. But anyways, yeah, nobody does a religion about how you poop and how you pee because that wouldn't that just wouldn't get anybody into it. But how you eat and what you eat, people like eating. They like eating, and so this connects you to the God. Anyways, okay, so I do have some time still. I'm excited. I have time. I have another 10 minutes or so. So I'm gonna read the part about Nadav and Avihu because I do have some fun things to say about that. Now, so this is chapter 10. Now Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, each took his fire pan, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and they offered before God alien fire, which had not been enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from God and consumed them. Thus they died by God's will. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is what God meant by saying, though those near me Though those near to me, I show myself. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I for that. So God kills Aaron's two sons. And then here's the first thing Moses says to Aaron after his two sons are murdered by God. This is what God meant by saying, through those near to me, I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people. And Aaron was silent. Oh man, that is so fucked up. That is just so, so fucked up. I got to read that again. Then Moses, so God is, first Aaron is like murdering all these animals and like throwing their blood on the altar and sticking their innards on this big fire. And then God appears as a fire. And then Nadav, what did Nadav and Avihu? They hardly get any lines in the text. They get like two lines. Now Aaron's sons, they just get one line. That's it. That's all they get. It's like it's like being in a Hollywood movie, just getting one line. Nobody's gonna remember you, but of course they do. Everybody remembers Nadav if you read the Torah. No, nobody who doesn't read the Torah knows who Nadab and Abihu are, but if you do read the Torah, you certainly know. Now Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, each took his fire pan. So they had a fire pan. They put fire in it and laid incense on it. Okay. Which they offered before God. And they offered before God alien fire. Okay, whatever. There's not that much information here. This is not very useful. Which had not been enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from God. I thought God was fire. Anyways, and thus they died by God's will. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're gonna die on this hill. This is where we're gonna end the Torah study. Okay. So I've given Torah studies before about this this part of the Torah. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to me. And so what I find really interesting about this part of the Torah study, so I mean there's not that much information to work with here. I mean, everybody's like, so here's a God. Again, remember, this is just a story. This is written by the Hasmoneans or somebody like that. And so they're just writing a story, and it's like there's other parts of the Torah where like stories are written and, they write the story and they do something to kind of twist the moral arc of the story a little bit. Like in Genesis and Bereshit, they write the story so that um, the people, they're kind of dolts, and then one of them decides to eat an apple, and so she's committing the sin, and then all of a sudden they're aware, I mean, or later on, one of the sons kills the other son. There's so they'll just put like a little twist on a story to, oh, this cat, I don't know what this cat is doing. So here they're kind of doing the same thing. It's like they're taking the two sons and kind of making them into um this part of the story, that they're there in the same way that Pharaoh is in Exodus. I mean, they're there as a plot device. There wasn't any real God. Nobody got murdered for offering an alien fire. None of this really happened because it's all just made up. But the people who wrote the story, they wanted to say something very specifically. They wanted to say something. And there's a few things that they wanted to say here. And I'll just list like three or four of them. So one of the things they wanted to say was, they wanted to say, this is the centralized religion. There's no other religion besides this religion for you, for your people. So you can't come here with the religion of the goddess. You can't come here with the religion of the pagans. You can't come here with the religion of the Greeks. Whatever the other religion is, it's not permitted here. Even if you grew up with that religion, even if that religion is indigenous to your culture, to your identity, to where you're from, even if you grew up with it, even if this was your mother's religion, you're not permitted to do that religion here. And just to make my point really clear, I'm gonna murder two people in the story just to show you that you can't come here with this religion. So that's mostly what it means. It's 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 a warning against, mostly against goddess worship, really, but also against other traditions which were around at the same time. The other thing that it is, the thing that I think lingers and is part of our collective history, is this is the story. This is again getting back to Ulysses. This is the father who creates the son and then is displaced by the son. So this is Jewish and it's Christian and it's pagan and it's other traditions. I mean, this is really the story of, you know, every generation. This is kind of the story of our moment too. I mean, every generation can't stand the fact that they're going to die and there's going to be another generation. And the next generation is going to have innovation and they're going to have their own set of ideas. Even within atheism, I was listening to a lecture the other day from an atheist, and it was I found her really annoying. She's like a social media influencer atheist, and this was on recovering from religion. But she's very popular. She's a science writer and a science communicator. And she was talking about how, if you really want to reach people nowadays as an atheist, you have to utilize social media because social media is where everything is happening. And she's convinced that like that's the future. We're never going back to anything except for social media and that kind of world, social media influencers. So she was talking about how Richard Dawkins isn't very popular anymore. And nobody wants to listen to Richard Dawkins. And like they want to listen to young, hip social media influencers. And she talked about how she's a rock climber and she's a science writer and I mean, she wasn't really that young. She's like 47, but in her field, she said she's young. And she's basically just talking about how, you know, how atheists communicate with each other. Same thing. Same thing as this story. I mean, this is about the conflict between the younger generation and the older generation. And it's like here in this story, the younger generation wants to innovate. They want to do something different. The way that the story is told and interpreted and understood and in the interpretations of the text is that they were overly enthusiastic and they didn't have the proper respect for the moment. So they didn't really respect the moment. But no, this is about our moment. I mean, right now at a time when they're just trying to completely demolish diversity, equity, and inclusion, when they're trying to undermine civil rights, when they're trying to take away our health care, when they're trying to completely bloat the US military, when they're violating international law, when they're demolishing the Department of Education, and when they're trying to undo climate science. That's exactly what this is. This is the older generation trying to destroy the younger generation because they don't want the younger generation and the things that the younger generation brings to undermine their own sense of the world and what it means. So that is how I will conclude this episode of Atheist Torah Study. Thanks so much for joining me. Next week is really fun. Next week is Tazria and Metzora, and I'm all prepared for that. It's about disgust and other things. So it'll be fun to get into Tazria and Metzora. It's these are all very bodily parts of the Torah. So and there's the God appears a lot in these stories. So there's plenty to talk about. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me today for Atheist Torah Study. I really appreciate it. And if you did actually stick around, I will see you next week.